There is a wound inside you that opens quietly, not when someone hurts you, not when life disappoints you, but when you disobey yourself. When the warrior you imagine collapses before the smallest temptation, when the promise you made at night shatters in the morning, when the version of you who could rise watches you choose comfort again and retreats in silent disappointment, most people think this is just procrastination, just lack of motivation, just a normal flaw. But it's far older than that, older than your childhood, older than your habits, older than your entire life. This fracture within you echoes something ancient, the very first disobedience ever recorded, a break so deep that all of humanity still feels it. And every time you abandon your own word, every time you betray your own potential, you reenact that original exile. You leave yourself. You walk away from who you were meant to be. Today, we go back to where it began, to Eden, to the first sin, to the moment the human heart learned to break itself. Then, we bring it to your modern life, to the silent battles you fight every night, every morning, every time you look in the mirror and know you could be more. And through the story of a fictional man named Elias, you'll see how one person can repeat this ancient fall for years, and how a single moment of awakening can begin the return home. Before we go deeper, if you want these kinds of transformative lessons every week, subscribe to Silent Path. And tell me in the comments, which emotion do you struggle with the most? Anger, loneliness, or self-betrayal? Chapter 1. The first disobedience. Long before humanity built cities, before it created nations, languages, cultures, there was only a garden, a command, and a choice. The scriptures say that sin began even before humans appeared. In the rebellion of Lucifer, the shining one, who desired to rise above the place he was given. That first act was not about violence, or desire, or greed. It was disobedience, a turning away from the path he was created to walk. Then, in Eden, the serpent carried that same fracture into the human heart. The temptation was simple. You will be like God, not in strength, not in wisdom, but in independence. In other words, do what you want. Forget the path you were given. Break your own alignment. The moment Adam and Eve obeyed the voice of desire over the voice of truth, something tore inside the human soul. A separation, a distance, a spiritual exile. The Bible describes it as the moment the world changed. Sin entered, death followed, and the human heart became divided. But here is what most people don't realize. Every act of self-betrayal you make today, every promise you break to yourself, every time you know what is right but choose the opposite, is not new. It is a reenactment, a replay, a modern echo of an ancient fall. And this is where our fictional character enters the story. Chapter 2. Elias and the Ancient Wound. Elias was not a bad man. He wasn't weak or lazy or lost by nature. He was like most people, strong in intention, fragile in execution. He wanted a disciplined life. He wanted a deeper connection with God. He wanted emotional strength, spiritual focus, inner clarity. But every night he promised, and every morning he abandoned. He told himself he would wake early. He told himself he would stop wasting time on distractions. He told himself he would stop running from the silence where truth waited for him. And yet, he collapsed before the smallest temptation. Scroll instead of pray, comfort instead of discipline, numbness instead of growth. And each time it happened, he felt it. The old wound opening again, the inner exile returning. He didn't have words for it, but you do, because you've felt it too. that quiet moment where you watch yourself betray yourself, and a soft shame spreads inside your chest. One night, after failing again, Elias whispered, "Why do I keep abandoning the man I want to become?" The answer didn't come immediately, but over the next weeks, he began to sense something strange. His modern struggle was not just psychological. It was ancient, spiritual, inherited, as if the disobedience he committed today was connected to the very first disobedience humanity ever made. The fracture was not new. It was simply reenacted. Elias was beginning to see the truth. Every moment of self-betrayal is a return to Eden, and every act of obedience is a step back home. Chapter 3. The Loops of Modern Exile. Modern life makes this exile worse. It teaches you to promise yourself transformation at night and break it by morning. It pulls you into loops of escape. The dopamine loops, the addiction loops, the emotional avoidance loops. You scroll because silence scares you. You delay because discomfort terrifies you. You stay in cycles that numb your potential because you are afraid of what rising would demand. And with every avoided responsibility, with every temptation followed, with every inner vow broken, you recreate the ancient fall. You repeat the first sin, not as a theological statement, but as a psychological reality. This is why you feel ashamed after you betray yourself. This is why your chest feels heavy. This is why you feel spiritually distant, even when God hasn't moved at all, because the exile is internal. The distance is self-created. The separation is something you feel inside your own identity. Elias saw it too. One night he stared at his ceiling at 3 a.m., phone in hand, realizing he had betrayed another promise. "I feel like I'm living outside of myself," he whispered. And he was right. Self-disobedience creates inner distance. Inner distance creates emotional exile. Emotional exile creates spiritual numbness. This is the chain. This is the fracture. This is the wound. And you've felt it deeply. Chapter 4. The Watching Future. One morning, something shifted for Elias. He woke up, looked at himself in the mirror, and felt a presence he had avoided for years. The version of himself who could have risen. Not an imaginary figure, not a fantasy, but a psychological and spiritual truth. The future self is real, and they are always watching. They see every moment you choose comfort, every time you step away from discipline, every time you pretend you didn't hear the call toward who you were meant to be. Elias felt this presence like a quiet disappointment, not judgment, not anger, not shame, but sadness, the sadness of a life postponed. You know this feeling. It's the moment you realize your higher self doesn't hate you. They're just waiting, patiently, silently, hopefully. But they can't step into your life until you stop breaking your own word, until the exile ends. Chapter 5. When disobedience becomes destiny. There comes a point where disobedience stops being an action and becomes an identity, a point where you no longer break your word. You simply don't expect yourself to keep it. This was the threshold Elias reached, and maybe you've reached it too. You stand at the edge of your own potential, feeling life calling you to rise. Yet you postpone the call again and again, until the postponement becomes who you are. Elias sat on the floor of his apartment one night, lights off, exhausted. He whispered, "If I don't change now, this will become my story." He felt the fear in his chest, not fear of failure, but fear of never becoming the person he was meant to be. And this is the moment that changes everything. The moment where you stop running from the truth. the moment where your old habits stop feeling comfortable, the moment where you can no longer pretend you are okay with wasting your life. This is the moment where exile turns into destiny, unless you interrupt it, unless you return, unless you obey yourself again. Elias didn't transform overnight. That's not how true growth works. But he did something far more powerful. He made a new covenant with himself. Not a loud promise, not a dramatic resolution, a quiet vow. I will no longer abandon the man I am becoming. From that day, he stopped trying to motivate himself. He focused on something deeper, identity-based discipline. He began acting not as someone who wants to be strong, but as someone who is becoming strong. Not someone trying to pray, but someone who lives in spiritual alignment. Not someone chasing self-control, but someone who is learning to embody it. Elias realized the truth you must realize too. You don't rise because you feel ready. You rise because your future self deserves it. These 4 steps combine ancient spiritual wisdom with modern psychological principles. 1. Awareness without escape. Every time you feel the urge to betray yourself, pause. Place your hand on your chest, breathe slowly, and say silently, I know what is happening. Naming the temptation interrupts the ancient pattern. 2. Choose one act of obedience. Not a full day of discipline, not a life overhaul, just one obedient act, 10 minutes of silence, one small task, one moment of resisting the easy path. Consistency grows from single moments. 3. Rebuild trust through tiny covenants. Stop making big promises. Make tiny ones and keep them. I will read for 5 minutes. I will pray for 3 minutes. I will clean one corner of the room. Self-trust grows like muscle through repetition, not intensity. 4. Enter the sacred silence. Spend a few minutes each day in silence. No music, no phone, no distractions. This is where the exile ends. This is where the inner fracture begins to close. This is where the original alignment is restored. You were not meant to live far from yourself. You were not meant to repeat the ancient fall forever. You were not meant to drown in loops of self-betrayal. There is a version of you, quiet, disciplined, spiritually aligned, who is waiting behind the noise. And they are not far away. They are one obedient moment away. So the question you must face now is this. What part of you must stop disobeying itself so your soul can finally come home? If this message spoke to you, subscribe to Silent Path and begin walking your path in silence. No one needs to know your growth. No one needs to applaud your progress. No one needs to witness your discipline. Your transformation is sacred, and the quiet ones grow the strongest.